Welcome to today's Brain Boost for SAP ByDesign. My name is Alex. Today I'm going to give you an overview of the difference between calendar control and process control. Depending on your business needs, you can use this in a simple way, which is what I will show you today. Or you can get into some greater sophistication and automation with these features. That's why I've decided to break this into 3 parts. Today our objective is for you to understand the difference between the 2 areas. But in a future Brain Boost, part 2 and part 3, we're going to help you understand the deeper features. So let's get started. First of all, both of these features are available to you. You may just decide to use one of these features, or you could use both of them together, as they do slightly different things. You probably can't get away without using calendar control. The reason being, this feature is what absolutely controls a period and prevents any entries from being made. So unless you're a very small organization, you will likely want the ability to lock down periods at some point and know that things will not change historically. Calendar control will let you do this. On the other hand, process control is about locking down all or some of your subledgers. This feature could be ignored because calendar control also locks down your subledgers. The difference is process control does it with automation based on a number of days into the next period. So this can be a great solution if, for example, you want accounts payable to be locked on the 3rd day of the month, but your billing maybe continues until the 5th day of the month. So how does it work? Well, calendar control, as I mentioned, is manual. You'll need to have your own reminders to go in and lock down the period. So remember, this doesn't target a specific subledger. Now, while there is some flexibility here to lock out certain types of entries using calendar control, and this could lead you to use this feature to allow accountants to perform their month end and prevent other departments from posting operational documents, we won't focus on that today. We'll talk about that in the next part. And also, while this is manual, it does have a simplicity to use. So calendar control is especially appealing to businesses that need flexibility on when they want to control their month end. Process control, on the other hand, because you've set it up in advance, the assumption here is you are managing your monthly close in a pretty consistent way. Yes, you can go in and extend the period, so you can modify it if you need to, but that's a manual step. So let's go in the system and have a look. So today we're going to focus on the General Ledger Work Center. And the 2 elements I'm talking about, so opening and closing your calendar, is right here. Under Common Tasks, open and close periods. And then the process control you would access through master data and companies. For now, we're going to start with this one. So when you go into this screen, you're going to get presented with a lot of rows. You will have a row for every single period, for every single fiscal year, but also if you have additional companies, an additional set of books, you may have an exponential number of records here. So it's important to use the filters, the parameter search at the top here. So let's focus on just one company for today's experiment. We're going to hit the Go button, and we're just going to see RM Leica. Now this is still a long list, and there's no way to filter this through the parameters anymore. However, tip here, very useful to use the filters in the headers. So let's focus on our prior period, which was in 2021, and then we'll look at just period 12. So the great thing about doing a filter like this is we can also really easily see that there are 2 different sets of books. You may or may not have this situation, but if you do have multiple sets of books, you are very likely wanting to block or unblock both of those simultaneously. That's up to you, unless you are just trying to prevent entry into an individual set of books. So that's up to you. So right now we can see that this is not blocked. What we would expect to happen is any entries could go through the system here, at least as far as a journal entry in the system. So as an experiment, let's just close one of these periods. So you've got the open and close button. You can see open is grayed out because the period is already not blocked. So focus on this 3rd column from the right here. That's really what's going to tell us what we need for today. And we're going to change that to closed, and we can see that now the status is blocked. Now, obviously, I could lock both sets of books, but for our test, I'm not even going to bother because I'm going to post a journal entry that's going to hit both anyway. So I'm going to go into my general ledger. Let's go into our journal vouchers. And I've got an entry set up here ready to go. We'll open it up so I can confirm the data for you. So you can see that we're posting this into last month, which was December of 2021. And the company is Almica, so that's the one where, and I've not indicated a set of books. So this entry should want to post into both my IFRS and my US GAAP. I'm going to try posting this. And you can see now that we get an error message. So we've effectively closed the period because of that restriction we put in play. So let's back out of here for a moment without saving. We'll go back to open and close periods. And let's just bring this up again because I think I had the screen open twice. So I'll take you right back in from scratch. We're going to go to General Ledger, open and close books. Do the same filters as before. So I'm going to look for my Almica company. I'm going to filter on the fiscal year and the fiscal period. Maybe one thing I'll point out, the reason I like to do that period is because you'll see that in these set of books, they're not adjacent to each other. So you can see I could do this here because I have both of those, but because they're not sorted together this way, they're sorted by year first, I can make that a little bit tricky. I could do a sort on this, so there's different ways you could get to this data. I find the filter to be quite simple. So this is as we left it, so we had our IFRS blocked. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to open the period. I'm going to save this. Let's just close out of this screen. Go back into our journal entry. And nothing has changed in here. We're going to try the post. And now we've successfully posted. So what have we learned? We've learned that through opening and closing periods, setting them to blocked or not blocked is going to allow journal entries to post. Keep in mind your sets of books. And then also keep in mind that you may have multiple periods at play. So feel free to open and close the periods as required. So let's talk a little bit about process control. Maybe before we even look at it, let's do a little experiment. So if we go into our supplier invoicing, I already set up a little test for us earlier, so I set up a document to be posted. And let's go in so we can actually see the posting date. So right now you can see we have a document and we backdated this document to December 31st. If I go in here and I attempt to post this document, you can see that we get an error. This is blocked in financial accounting. So that seems strange because we already know the period's not blocked from a process control. So the important thing to remember here is that this is a subledger entry. So this is also being determined based on how process control is set up. Now, before we go into process control, we're going to go back into our calendar control, and I just want to bring something to your attention. If we go back to what we were looking at before, let's focus in, laser focus just on period 12. And what you will see is that you have some more information here at the bottom of your screen. And this is actually giving you a window into what's going on with process control. So what process control is telling us is that all business groups, meaning all subledgers, there is a rule in play that is saying if the posting date is between December 1st and December 31st, you may only make entries up until January 15th. So today is January 19th, and now you understand the reason why that accounts payable invoice was prevented from posting. So there's nothing we can do about this inside this open and close periods. All that we can control is whether journal vouchers are blocked or not. So instead, we're going to go back to General Ledger. I mentioned earlier, master data, go to companies. And here you have a single process control for each legal entity. Although it does tell you a default set of books here, you are setting this across all of your sets of books. So you won't have to do this as often as opening and closing calendars. So click on the process control button. And relevant today is really focusing on the current period we're in. So we're going to change this query and we're going to say we want to see everything. And depending how long your system's been live, you may get a lot of rows here. So you may want to take advantage of sort features. So for example, well, actually, we're just going to scroll down for this one. So let's look for our row that's affecting us. So we can see here December 1st to December 31st. And this is what's preventing us from making this entry into accounts payable. So how do we change that? Well, the easiest way, because you can see that this field is not editable. Now you will notice that some of the other entries are editable. The reason that is because these were manually inserted into this table. Your SAP system out of the box is automatically going to have process control activated. And the assumption is the system will want to close your period 15 days into the new month. And so each of these grayed out rows represents an automated entry that the system made, telling the system that at the 15th day, I can no longer make entries into my subledgers. So how do we extend this? We are going to just add a row. We are going to indicate that it's not blocked. We're going to say all. So we're going to open up all of our subledgers. And what I like to do is start with my posting date. So this is the day that my posting starts. So my 12/01/21. Now pay attention to this. As soon as I tab out of this field into the next one, you may have a situation where this sorts. So it looks like it disappears. It's just sorted down into your grid. That's why I was avoiding sorting this, because I wanted you to see this behavior, something you see a lot. If you do have a lot of rows, you may think you've lost your row and you have to kind of go hunting for it. And there we can see that's the entry we started, but because it's sorted it, so what I can do is I can actually just say, let's sort this by descending. And we're going to say, let's start with the most recent posting dates at the top. So this is not a bad idea to do that the moment you come in the screen, and then you're looking at the most relevant data at the top of your grid and you won't have that issue. So let's finish our entry. So I'm going to put my 12/31/2021. And now I'm going to extend this and I'm going to say I'm okay with posting all the way until tomorrow, since today is the 19th. So make sure you get your year right if you're straddling a calendar fiscal year like I am, and double check your dates. So typically this is going to be a certain number of days into the next month, which is probably the current month that you're in now. And you will notice that my other entry is still here. So once you've added this row, you cannot impact the other one, but the system is going to look at all of these records and it's going to take the most generous opening that it can and say that I'm going to ignore this one for the 15th because something more generous has been set up in the system. And so now this should let us post our accounts payable invoice. So we're going to save and close this. Maybe before we do that, let's go back to our open and close periods. Have a look at this one last time. So let's just filter our one company. And go back into that one more time. Okay, so company 1000, 2021, period 12. And now if you look at the bottom of our screen, you can see that we have our second entry appearing here as well. So this is not something you have to check, but just if you happen to go into your open and close periods, just keep in mind that you can see your process control rules in the screen as well, because that can be useful to help you understand why a document is getting an error when you're trying to post it. So we can see here it's not blocked, and we can see as far as our process control is concerned, we now have until the 20th to book anything from any subledger. Let's do a test and see if that actually works. So we'll go back into our supplier invoicing. Find one of those test documents I set up for us. Let's take one that's in process. We're going to hit the edit button. So let's double check our dates. So yes, we're trying to post this into December. And let's hit the post button, see what happens. And you can see at the bottom here, this has been successfully posted. So we now know that process control has been widened. And at this point, people can continue to enter documents. So if this was a one-time thing, you just wanted to get one more document in the system, one last thing you might need to think about is, do I need to lock down payables again to prevent somebody else from putting entries in until the end of tomorrow, because I'd set this to be valid until then. So I'm going to go back into my general ledger. I'm going to go back into my companies, go back into my Almica companies, process control. And it's actually, because this is relevant for today, we don't even have to change this query. We can see that this record that we created is right here at the top of the list. And what I can do is just remove this row like it never existed. Save that. If we go back and we look at all of our entries, let's redo that search descending. So we can see there's our rule that was governing December 1st to December 31st. The only rule in play is that as of January 15th, nothing could be posted. So keep that in mind. This is the day you're creating the document, so there is nothing that anyone can enter into that document in any other date field that is going to allow accounts payable to post. It is going to be prevented because today is the 19th of January. So some things to remember. When it comes to blocking your calendar, that's no entries of any sort, even from subledgers. And regardless of the closing step, this means the period is absolutely closed. So when you say that that item is blocked, it is blocked, nothing can be closed. I didn't really get into this. I'll show this in greater detail in the enhanced calendar video we do next. But you can have multiple periods open, but they must be consecutive. And so you can run into some errors if you're trying to open up a prior period and you have closed periods in between. Something else to remember, you can reopen and re-close those periods as often as you want. So you can literally go back a year into the system and reopen the period. You will need to take things into consideration like your retained earnings and stuff like that, but it is possible to reopen historical periods and post entries again. Things to remember about process control. It only looks at the subledger. So if your process control day has been exceeded, you may still post journal entries and vouchers. You saw that when we did the first test, process control was set at the 15th, but it still allowed us to post a journal voucher because process control never looks at journal entries or journal vouchers, just at operational documents. And lastly, process control lines may be added to reopen periods. They can be modified. They can be removed. So you can always change what you've set up in the process control. So thank you. This has been your weekly Brain Boost by Alex.